I'm Auriea Harvey, and this is Michaël Samyn. And together we are Tale of Tales, a small studio based in Ghent, Belgium. And thank you for inviting us to this wonderful event, and we're very happy to finally be a speaker here today. What we're going to talk about this morning is about our two latest projects, one that has just been released yesterday, and another that we are actively working on now, called Cathedral-in-the-Clouds. But before, we're going to start with some history, slightly, and I guess it's an origin story. It's a tale of sex, a tale of religion, and a tale of cyberspace. Because this very dark slide that you can barely see, which represents cyberspace, a field of green with us floating above, is where Michaël and I met. Michaël and I met online in 1999. We were both interactive designers, or designers of interactivity, however you want to put it. And this was a very important meeting for both of us. The first thing that happened the night that we met was that we accidentally had cybersex. Accidentally, because we didn't know it was going to turn into that, we were just chatting. But this was important because it also was the first time that we recognized formally the connection for us between electricity and sensuality. We went on to immediately collaborate on two projects about this subject, one of which was called the God Love Museum, which was a project it probably needs sound, a project in 5 parts. Yeah, and it's too bad there's no sound. I'm going to start it again because you kind of need that. Is it on? Okay. What you're seeing here are the books of Leviticus and Deuteronomy. These were named after books of the Bible, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, and we did it this way, and it was basically autobiographical net art projects that we made. But the reason why we called it the God Love Museum was because when we met, we sort of fell so hard for each other that we gave up our previous lives to be together, and it felt like this was the most momentous thing that we had ever done. It was operatic. It could only be described in like a grand mythological narrative, like something like the Bible. But this became somewhat of a precedent-setting project for us as we went on to create other projects that had similar themes, autobiography, religion, sensuality. Like, this one was sort of more of a funny thing, Eden.Garden, which was another net art project that we made. It was commissioned by the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art in 2001, where it was a text parser. It parsed the code of websites, and so it turned every single web page that you visited into a Garden of Eden. So it was sort of showing that behind every single web page was a paradise. And Michaël and I put ourselves into these gardens as Adam and Eve. But I say all this as sort of just a prelude, as this is the digital paradise in which we met. We went on to create 8 video games as Tale of Tales. And one sort of subset of our games that I want to talk about, that we really want to get into, is this concept we had that was called Flower Lock, that has led to 2 projects, and also sort of tangentially relates to what we're working on now. Flower Lock actually was a research project, or it began as a research project into the intersection of sexuality, spirituality, and gaming. It's called Flower Lock for reasons I hope will become evident, but it's right now we sort of archive all the projects that were related to the flower lock research on a website called concentric.net, cntrc.net. And these have links to the projects that sort of has resulted from the research, and also a link to the reference collection, of which I'll show you some of the things that we've collected there. Because flower lock was this idea of how do we represent sensuality in an interactive format. We didn't want to do what a lot of developers end up doing with sex in games, where you just end up with, like, you know, sort of a version of porn where you have very literal human dolls that getting it on or something. We wanted to think about this more from the standpoint of what it feels like, from the idea of a curve of excitement. So we also wanted to think about representation of this. As I said, we didn't want to make mannequins that you were manipulating. So we looked at flower forms. We looked at the sensuality, the sensual forms of nature. As represented by this room, I might add also. Yeah, looking at the room. This room would be in our reference collection. We were also concerned in a way, because of the things that I was showing you at the beginning, this idea that sensuality is somehow connected to an almost spiritual state. We were interested in things like this, designs that were used in religion that were representing the cosmos and man's place in it. We as human beings being an important center of that universe, and the ecstatic state of spirituality in general. We were interested in forms and in motions, forms from nature, but then also the playful forms that that are created for sensual activity. Yeah. And these types of things were very important to our research as well. And also, yeah, as I was saying about the room, also this idea of how richness is expressed, how the sensual materiality of the world is expressed through, yeah, images, nature, and creations such as jewelry. But format, in terms of, I guess, the largest influence in terms of form were very ornate religious structures, cathedrals, the sort of way that we go from the material, symbolically from the material to the spiritual, the square to the circle in temples, temple design. And we did a lot of sketching around this. This is the first time that we have these references to the heavenly spheres in a project. And these are sketches by Michaël of what we were thinking of as vessels that were going to be a part of our video game that we were making at the time. And basically, this game, the references, the research ended up referencing so many things that it felt like the project ultimately was about everything. Everything in the universe, absolutely everything. Nature, humans, our place in the universe, from the macro to the micro and back again. And we started to get very overwhelmed. But we did make from all of this one prototype which we felt encompassed all of our ideas. The flower and the lock. We split these up into two pieces. I was sort of in charge of the lock, but Michaël was more in charge of the flowers. The flower, I will show you what that sort of outcome is in our project, the prototype that we made, which was called The Cosmos and the Cave. This is a representation of the sort of flower aspect, where you are flying in a vessel through a tunnel, and at first it's all white. But then, as you interact with it, it blushes different colors, different natural shapes appear. Let's let it play and see what happens. As you fly through, it starts as a simple square, and then it gets larger and larger and starts trending more towards the circular shape. But the game also had a sort of dirtier side to it. It was very meditative to play. The times that we've had play tested it, people entered into this sort of trance-like ecstatic state that we were hoping for. But then you could do these sort of power-ups that sort of reference this more sexual side of the tunnel, and how you were actually feeling this whole space up. But it became very evident to us that we couldn't pull this off as a full-on experience. It was a wonderful prototype, but we couldn't actually finish it for all kinds of reasons. So what we ended up doing was just taking certain subset of our research and of our idea and making one simple game out of it, something much smaller. We decided we wanted to concentrate on this idea of touching your device. We decided it should be an iPad and iPhone game or mobile game. It also runs on Android and also runs on the computer. But it was about taking this multi-touch aspect of the devices that we have and finding a way that you and your device are communicating with one another. And we also continued with this idea of the shapes. How would you put this design? It's like a temple, but it's also related.
Well, it's based on the classical Temple of Venus, which is sort of this structure, but we sort of thought it was like a breast with a nipple on it.
Yeah.
So it mixes up the spiritual.
So taking sensual shapes, and ultimately the game became Luxuria Superbia, which this just shows a little bit of what It's a very difficult game to show how sensual it is and how your device starts talking to you. Your phone will start telling you how it likes to be touched, and in order to succeed you have to rub it in the right way. It's sort of subliminal almost at first, and then you sort of, any adult will suddenly realize what's going on. But we were surprised that people really liked this game, and that we ended up winning an award, the Nuovo award for the IGF for this game, which was a surprise, yeah. But still, it was only half of the idea. The other half of the idea, it was involving this device here. Before you went into the flower tunnel, you were confronted with this device, which we called the lock. And the lock was really about the universe. It was the concentric spheres of the universe with the Earth in the middle. And this is where you gathered your vessels that you would then fly through the tunnel with. So I still, in spite of the fact that we had made Luxuria Superbia from the flower ideas, I still never let go of this idea of the lock and this symbolic representation of the universe, because it was something that I just went crazy thinking about. I sketched around it for a really long time and was completely interested in this universal depiction where, it's not about science, it's about truth, in a way. A truth that we, as not so religious people, no longer believe in, but this idea that someone out there is the force moving the universe and making the universe turn, and that we are in the center. And in a way, this is, when we were asked recently to make another project for the Triennale of Design Expo in Milan, they said they wanted us to make a small vignette, and so I decided that we should return to this idea of the concentric universe. And again, it was meant to be a mobile project. And so again, it became for us this idea that you from the outside are controlling a universe that is within. And that became our game, LOCK, which stands for Loki Omnis Caelestis Kyrios, which I cannot pronounce. but it means, Michael?
All places belong, or all locations belong to the heavenly Lord.
Yeah.
But without the belong, so
Yeah, or of the heavenly.
of. So heavenly spheres, basically.
Yeah. We're getting a feedback. I turned it down.
Is it because maybe is it playing?
I don't know. I don't know what it is. But again, it's too bad there's no sound. But this is available now as part of the Triennale game collection that you can download for free for your devices, and you can play our game, which was unlocked yesterday. The game collection is actually a series of 5 apps, 5 vignettes by different developers, and this is our contribution to it. One way that's a thing worth noting, I don't know if you can see it, but the way you navigate the game is by turning in a circle. And in the end, you end up with this lovely reminder of your emotion drawn onto your screen, reminding you that you are the one who is turning the universe. And this is now the relationship that you have with your technology. There's no more sound, so it's okay now. We shouldn't have any more feedback, I think. So, okay, to reiterate, the reason why we're so obsessed with this is it's this idea of the spiritual and the material, the machine and the I don't know, heavenly spheres. And this leads directly into the project that we're working on now, which is called Cathedral-in-the-Clouds. Sound? Yeah, we have a little bit of sound. Okay. And now it's working.
So, Cathedral-in-the-Clouds is the project that we're working on now. We hope it will be a very big project. And we've only just started, so we can't really show anything yet. But we'll talk a bit about where the idea comes from and what the project entails, what we're trying to make. Yes, skip to the next one.
Yeah.
This is the basis of the idea. It's basically our love for art. More specifically, old art. In this case, even just Flemish primitives in the video. So we like looking at these things. We like the feelings that these works give us. But one of the things that was sort of realized after a while is that a lot of these artworks are religious in nature, and specifically Christian. And so we're not religious ourselves. We don't actively practice any kind of faith. I guess we should be called atheists or something. I mean, our parents brought us up to either say there's no God at all, or you pick one, or, you know, when you're old enough, or something. So at this point now, when we're confronted with these very sincere artworks, we feel like complete idiots. Like spiritually, we're like empty-headed. So we want to learn more about this. Yeah. So I think we confuse the experience of beauty and God. For us, as atheists maybe, this is the same thing. When we experience this deep emotion with art, for us that is a very spiritual emotion. It's a connection to the cosmos. So when we say God, we sort of mean beauty, or vice versa, I think. It is spiritual. So with this project, Cathedral-in-the-Clouds, we now want to directly create similar opportunities for contemplation as those old artworks give us. Because we have a feeling that a lot of people don't really get that out of the old art anymore. It takes a certain concentration, a certain willingness. You have to be ready to accept that, you know, to look at Christian mythology and take it seriously and forget about all the nasty things that have happened in history with that, etc. So we're trying to sort of find a way to present these stories and this iconography in a form and a format that is palatable to contemporary people. That's and it's one of the reasons why we use technology for it, and all these devices that we have now. But we don't want to be like ironic about it or just quote it for the hell of it. We really want to be very sincere to the spirit of what those works are, which for us is this is art that should inspire us to be better people, to be kinder, to be more patient, to more humble in many cases, and to learn to look at our surroundings, at the world in an admiring fashion, in a sort of it's almost a form of worship. I think we want to teach ourselves to worship the existence again with this work. And a lot of people, I'll have a drink first. Do you hear this guy?
Yeah, it's like...
Oh, the more I...
It's louder, yeah.
It wasn't doing that in the beginning. So, in general, people who do that... Oh, that's better now.
Yeah.
Okay. Who are sort of drawn to more spiritual experiences now, in the West, they sort of go to either older religions, like pagan religions, or to the East, to Asian religions. But I think that's totally unnecessary. I mean, I understand why they do it. It's sort of like, oh my God, you know, the Christians burned so many witches to the stakes and I can't be associated with that. But I think it's a pity because there's so many elements in Christianity that are so beautiful and so interesting. And I think we can embrace Christian mythology the way that we already embrace Roman and Greek mythology, you know, even those, you know, happens a lot of awful things there too, but we can see those stories as very inspiring, metaphors for life, etc. And I hope we can do that with Christianity as well. Yeah. So basically we choose these projects because it gives us an excuse to do research, which means traveling around and seeing things. So even in our own country, there's so many churches that we can visit and museums, and we read a lot about the subject. It's totally fascinating. We're kind of, I guess, geeks about this kind of stuff. This is one of the reasons we were happy to be able to come to Italy again, because of course there's a lot of this Christian heritage to be visited. And
you guys have a lot of
here.
churches.
I mean, that's a good thing about being in Belgium. It's kind of an easy access we have to a lot of. I mean, all these places are fairly near to each other, and there's so many things to see. So we're happy to be here, and sort of. And this is the first time also that we really stressed where we are, because you know we met in cyberspace, and this kind of internet and this lack of location was very important to us. But we're sort of embracing bit where we are, our surroundings.
And that includes the paintings that we're surrounded by in Flanders, which I just want to say that the thing that we love about this kind of artwork is its pre-photographic perspective on the world and on visualizing the unimaginable or things that only can be imagined, but seeing them in a way that is completely unrealistic. And this reminds us of what video games have done really well all along, is presenting a world that couldn't possibly exist, but as using the medium in an artistic way to help people to actually be there. So in that sense, that's what the project is going to do. It's going to be in two parts. Cathedral-in-the-Clouds will consist of digital dioramas and a virtual cathedral that will be in VR. The core of the project is a series of digital depictions of saints that will be created for different platforms like desktops, laptops, tablets, etc., even videos and maybe prints or something. But it will all be housed in a cathedral that's in virtual reality. Both aspects of the project are a bit endless, so we're slightly worried about that because we could just go on, like creating these stories of the saints. But also, we're not going to be using while we won't make anything up, all the depictions of the saints will be of our own invention, so we won't be copying anything that already exists. And the cathedral, which we already have planned because we did a Kickstarter for it, and certain people have already sort of contributed money and bought a chapel, for example, or a statue, or we're going to be building things like that. But the important thing is that that the cathedral is built the way cathedrals are built. It starts in one foundation and then kind of grows and becomes something else over time. As I said, yeah, the digital dioramas are computer programs that will be on multiple platforms. We're just like, oh, you know, but it's hopefully to give people who look at them, to view them, to get a contemplative and sort of artistic experience in the intimacy of the home. So it's not like you have to like go and look at artwork. We are bringing it to you. I mean, this is something, it sounds silly in a way, but it's like, this is how we've seen video games all along, as a way of giving people something to interact with, an interactive artwork. Whether they're seen that way by the populace at large is something else, but that's something that we've always aimed for. And in this case, we want it to be a bit like a digital version of devotional cabinets or portable altars, a sacred object that can be carried with you, and you can open it whenever you need contemplation. Next to that, we have the virtual cathedral, but it's worth saying that we're making this in VR, and we chose VR technology precisely because it's very inaccessible. The hardware to experience 3D VR simulations is very expensive, and it's very trendy right now, but it's a pretty uncool thing to do. It messes up your hair. You look kind of weird with this thing on your face. I mean, you can't really do it among people who don't know what you're doing. Our VR cathedral will be a kind of pilgrimage that people have to take. We will have the equipment, the VR cathedral set up in physical spaces. We're already talking to different festivals, museums, and other types of spaces where people would actually be able to go and visit our cathedral if they don't have the equipment at home. So just like cathedrals in the Gothic era were built as pilgrimage destinations or stops on the road to Compostela, you can go and take a pilgrimage to this virtual cathedral. Cathedrals in the Gothic era were built as destinations, much like we're hoping to do. And even though we don't intend to build also, again, a replica of any existing Gothic church or temple or something like this, we're very interested in the construction and design of Gothic buildings. So we're fascinated by the way in which these complex and intricate structures are composed through very simple geometric principles, and how the design forms a connection between the heaven and the earth with humans, with this sort of human format, if we were to lay down in the floor plan our arms and head and feet all fit within. You want to continue, because I need some water.
Yeah. So I mean, this is actually the basis of Gothic architecture, even though it looks more complicated. But it all starts. It's basically the squaring of the circle. It's just, the square is the earth, the circle is heaven, and the cross is sort of the path between the transitional shape between the square and the circle. The cross is not just the crucifix. That's kind of the obvious overlapping, but it's also the orientation on the world. Churches are almost always, especially old churches, Gothic churches, are facing towards the east where the sun rises, and the backside where you enter, basically, which we often consider the front side, is the west side where the sun rises. So it's the darkness. You come from the darkness, you go into the church towards the light, basically. And that way a cathedral is connected to both location, that orientation, and time, of course, because the sun, the rotations of the sun, the Earth's rotation around the sun, it's the time aspect. And of course, then there's the third axis, which is from Earth to heaven. Yeah. So you have this like three-dimensional cross, yeah, which I can't do with two arms. Need a third arm. Can you do it? So yeah, even though we're not going to really replicate a real cathedral, what we do want to do, and what the reason of our research is to somehow find a way in VR to provoke that kind of feeling of when you enter a church, that you suddenly are in a space of another type of reality, basically, where you are embraced not just by a sort of story of faith, but also by history. So like, for me, it often feels that way. You enter this place and suddenly it's like it's more than home even. It's like the whole planet becomes your home when you enter. I mean, I feel comfortable in a cathedral more than anywhere else. So we hope to replicate that somehow a little bit in our project. But one of the things we can do in VR is completely deny what happens in real life, like gravity and all physical forces. I mean, it's an endless space in all directions as well in the cyberspace. And this is sort of one of the things, we're also looking at Baroque, not just Gothic art, because some of these things also seem to be floating and completely denying physical forces. So that's, I mean, we're seeing the inaccessibility of the VR cathedral is also part of, for us, to seeing the cathedral almost as an imaginary space. Actually, personally, I don't even care if anybody sees it. It's just the fact that it exists that is important. And that's why we're calling it in the clouds, of course. That's the clouds is the imagination. The clouds is the new word for cyberspace, what used to be called cyberspace. So we see it as a tribute to how we felt when we met in 1999 on the internet, floating above like the data in cyberspace, jacked in. Yeah. And so I think even in sort of the aesthetics, we'll go towards that, to sort of not just show the cathedral as a static entity, but show the data flows basically of a cathedral, the emotions that go into it. Because to us too, in 1999, when we were on the information superhighway, it felt like almost like the afterlife, like endless. It was like eternity we entered. So it's always been a very sacred space to us. So the connection is very, very clear between the digital and the spiritual for us.
So,
are we doing this?
Yeah, I'm doing this. I'm doing this.
Getting serious now.
So the things, these are some thoughts just to sort of wrap up the whole thing, but I felt it was important to sort of touch upon. All successful art from the past was made with technologies that were contemporary to the artist. So, you know, when oil painting was, came up, all of a sudden that was the new technology, so everybody made oil paintings. To us, digital technology is the medium of our time. So while our inspiration is coming from the past, we really are thinking that we need to do this with no nostalgia, because we think that having too much nostalgia doesn't give good results, and the only way is forward. Artists are adventurers, and so we feel very adventurous. But even the pre-modern artists with their traditionalist or classicist approach were still trying to be very forward-looking, always on the edge, exploring ideas long before scientists were researching them. So we feel like all of these artworks, that while they're depicting the spiritual, in some ways they're in terms of human feeling, ahead of science. I don't know. So, right. We're doomed to be atheists by our upbringing in a secular world, and we might be confusing beauty and God, but we want to explore the terrain of the sacred more deeply because of the sort of intuitive knowledge that art provides, because of the deep emotional pleasure that beauty brings, and because religious traditions form a connection with history and with culture that is all around us. And we want to be a part of that temporal network. I think a lot of our work with Tale of Tales has been about telling and retelling stories that are already out there in culture, stories that everyone already knows, and this is no different. So another big part of this is the synthetic image. It's an important aspect that digital 3D shares with pre-modern painting. This idea that you're creating an image, it's not a photograph, it's not about reality. You build the reality into your work, and you don't photograph them. We believe that photography kind of ruined painting, but thanks to the computer, we can get back to a form of non-photographic image making. I mean, it's something that all of us as game makers really know about. We need to escape the dominance of our photographic eye in order to create the realities instead of making pictures of realities. Ultimately, in 3D, we create objects and not images, objects that exist in an imaginary space stored on a hard drive. The screens of the computer are just windows that offer us a way to see that imaginary space. It's important with relation to the sacred because we need to depict symbols, ideas, not actual people or places. Right. We consider the endless space of real-time 3D to be a sacred environment. It is a symbolic representation of cyberspace, and we relate cyberspace to the medieval concept of the heavenly spheres, a place where we can exist as souls in a reality that is not material, a reality that exists only because we dream it together. Digital 3D is organized along those three axes that we were talking about, left, right, up, down, front, back, and together they form a cross that links us to the cosmos, where we orient ourselves physically along the cardinal directions, east, west, north, south, horizontally, and the poles, vertically, and spiritually through the symbol of the crucifix and of the little gizmo. Right, real time. We create our objects in an imaginary space that can only be seen when rendered to a screen. And for us, it is important that this rendering happens at the moment of looking. Michael has this theory about the effect of art that because he only has deep artistic experiences when in the presence of the artworks. No, I have deep experiences with all art, whether it's a reproduction or not. But he doesn't like reproductions. But a photograph of the painting doesn't give you the same feeling as being in the presence of the actual object often, which I think is why people value originals so highly. Even though I think there's a place for reproduction, very much so. But it's because your body needs to be present in the same space as the art for the magic to happen. Well, the digital equivalent of this, since it's not physical and there is no object that your body really shares space with, there's time. We share time with the digital work of art, and you're present when it is running. We don't call it real-time art for nothing. The art is alive. The software is running on a computer, and the algorithms interplay to create a spectacle that is unpredictable as the material reality we live in. The pivotal aspect of the computer is its processing. Oh, wait, I should totally not hitting the slides. No other medium can do this. It's crucial, it's unique. Interaction is just a side effect of the real-time processing. It can be used to demonstrate that the art is alive. To get the artistic aesthetic effect out of digital art, we need to share some time with it. Be in the presence of it while it is running on the processors of the computer. Time is to digital art what space is to analog art. And lastly, cyberspace. The internet may be dominated by large corporations at the moment who have turned back the clock and are definitely stalling evolution of the digital medium because they're desperately clinging to an economic system that is about to collapse. But computers and computer networks offer us a way of having almost anything for almost nothing. At some point, the old habits of a world dominated by scarcity will become untenable, and the capitalist system will collapse. Oh, yes, it will. Paying for something that can be copied for free is absurd, but paying someone for doing work that you enjoy the results of is great. So we personally are replacing sales by donations and patronage and so on. We like to think of this as preparing for a post-capitalist world, and remember, money is also completely virtual and completely artificial. No animal species needs money to survive. Quite the contrary, many animals go extinct because of money. And at the moment, it seems like the internet is dominated by commerce. It can be hard not to be cynical about it. It looks like a shopping mall. But the internet is not Facebook, the internet is not Twitter, and the internet is not YouTube. Michael and I used to have a saying, what is it? Technology is not the future, we are, and by we mean humanity. All those other things will go away in the end. But even while they're here, they do not replace cyberspace. They don't replace the virtual, they don't replace the internet, and they don't replace us. Underneath the capitalist nonsense, the internet still offers the opportunities it once did. Cyberspace is endless. We can still explore and connect. And that was our talk. We did it in time. Thank you.